approximately 541 million years ago, towards the beginning of the Cambrian era, and then also lasted approximately 20 to 25 million years. Now, the reason why the Cambrian explosion, or part of the reason why the Cambrian explosion is so important, and what kind of drew me to it for this particular assignment, was the massive appearance of animal life on Earth at this time. Now, there wasn't necessarily brand new animals appearing every single day that had never been around before, although there were new evolutions that took place, but there was just a lot of evolution in general that was going on Earth at the time. This is considered the largest appearance of animal phyla in Earth, or on Earth. So the largest single collection of appearance of new animals, new evolutions, and just offshoots of different what life forms had existed at the time. The largest appearance of that in the history of the Earth, and only in a 20 million year period, which 20 million sounds like a lot, but in the overall grand scheme of things, it's really not that large of a chunk of time. Now, it was not only animals that were evolving and changing during this time, but also plants and other things on the earth were changing as well, that would eventually lead to the betterment of the earth. And I'll touch a little bit more on that in a little bit. Now, one of the first things that I wanted to discuss was the marine life, just simply because majority of life on Earth at the time came from the sea or bodies of water. More saltwater based as opposed to freshwater based, because at the time there wasn't necessarily a lot of freshwater that we knew about. But one animal in particular that through my research, it seems like a lot of people think or thought had many and several appearances during this time period, but really did not, after we kind of went back in and researched and studied more fossils. That animal that I'm talking about is crustaceans. Now, the crustaceans that many people believed that existed during the Cambrian explosion come from the Burgess Shale that we studied about up in Canada. Now, upon further investigation and further study into these particular fossils, the new evidence is determining that these crustaceans are not true, what they consider to be a true crustacean. It does not fit the crown of a true crustacean. Now, there are still crustaceans that appeared during this time. However, most of them were not in that Burgess Shale as originally thought back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And like I said, they've researched everything, and although they are linked to crustaceans, they are not what they consider to be a true crustacean. Some of the true crustacean fossils that have been found from the Cambrian explosion are actually from over in Sweden, in the Swedish Orsten horizons, and they have certain fossils of crustaceans that they've been able to definitively prove are linked to true crustaceans that we see today. Now, this was kind of the first appearance of crustaceans, so it is still kind of a big deal, and that this is where we first kind of see the appearance of an animal that we see all over the place nowadays. Now, the only thing with the fossils is the only real fossils that we have to study are only about 2 millimeters in size. So the fossils didn't leave us a lot of information to work with just due to the size, and the fact that we had what turned out to be false fossils as far as crustaceans go over in Canada. So we're still researching and still trying to learn more and more. However, that is growing every day. Now, I touched a little bit earlier on changes that occurred on the Earth itself. One of the big changes that took place on Earth itself had to do with our atmosphere, and more in particular with the oxygen supply in our atmosphere. When the Earth was first formed, what they called free oxygen did not exist. There was not oxygen just floating in the air for people to breathe, for animals to breathe, due to the lack of plants and just the way the Earth was at the time. Now, over the evolution of the Earth, as life forms started to grow and develop. One life form in particular created or learned how to do what we now know as photosynthesis. Well, photosynthesis helped to put more oxygen into the air, and during the Cambrian explosion is when we really started to see a big push of free oxygen into the air, which allowed for more animals and plants to have more air to breathe. Now, ever since this took place during the Cambrian explosion, the oxygen rise on planet Earth has been on a rise. We keep going up and up. Now, today is a little bit different, obviously, with EPA and different emissions that we put off that we didn't realize were harmful that now we know are. So we're kind of fighting that a little bit. But the main point being, due to the Cambrian explosion, the oxygen that you and I and everybody else breathes, we have plenty of. And it's thanks to what took place during the Cambrian explosion. Another big thing that happened during the explosion that also affects the animal life is the predator to prey scenario. Many researchers believe that this also played a part in the explosion itself as far as how and why animals had to evolve, a big chunk of that being the predator-prey relationship. Predators, if they didn't catch a meal, that was the worst that happened to them. They didn't eat that day. They could try again the next day. However, prey, once you're caught, you're done. You're the meal, your dinner. You're getting cooked up and served on a platter that night. So in order to better survive, they had to find ways of evolving their lifestyles, their habitats, things like that. All took place during the Cambrian explosion, or started to, which then snowballed onto what we see today. The other big thing that happened, or another big thing that happened on Earth that still plays a part in and affected what we see and know today about Earth, was the massive increase in calcium in the seawater. Now, as we all know, when we're told as little kids, drink more calcium. Calcium helps you build strong bones. Therefore, especially playing sports, you're less likely to break a bone because you've been drinking calcium to help keep the strength up. Now, the calcium in the oceans and why that is important is that helped actually to get certain sea life to be able to develop either shells or skeletons. Now, many of the sea life at that time were either skeletonless, so they were just mostly cartilage swimming around, or they had, semi-hard shells, but not to the point that we see today. Whereas when we were able to get that massive increase of calcium into the oceans, these animals were able to evolve, like I've been, like the big point of this video is, and what happened in the Cambrian explosion, we've had evolution to get these animals to get more rigid skeletons, to harden up their shells, which also kind of traces back into the predator-prey relationship. Lots of big predators in the oceans. Easy way for the prey animals to be able to defend themselves is have a shell, similar to hermit crabs, that sort of thing, where, they hide inside a shell to protect themselves. So that way predators maybe A, won't see them there or find them, or B, it's just that much more difficult for them to get caught so that they don't become dinner. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate back on kind of my main 3 points there, as far as calcium growth in the seawater helping sea life to evolve. We also had the oxygen explosion on the planet, which helped plant and animal life to continue to flourish and evolve at the pace that it was starting to, which was very, very rapid compared to anything we'd ever seen or really have seen since. The other big thing was just the rapid evolution of animal and plant life on Earth. Had it not been for the Cambrian explosion, many of the things that we see and know today may or may not be around or in the form that we see them today. And we have a lot to thank the Cambrian explosion for. One of my personal favorites would be the oxygen, so that we can all still continue to walk and talk and breathe. Thank you, and have a great time.